pig is the R-rated Ratatouille I didn't know I wanted to see.
So the movie starts with Nicolas Cage looking all homeless and stuff, and he's living in the woods. He's got a truffle pig. As far as we know, all he does is find truffles, and the pig is supposed to like sniff it out or whatever. And one day, some tweakers break into his cabin and steal his pig. And then he calls his business partner. So he calls him to give him a ride, and he tells him his pig's been stolen, and he's like, this isn't really my problem. But he's like, if you want business, this is your problem. We find the people that did it through one of the other truffle sellers.
She was like, I am not involved, until he was like, someone took my pig, and she's like furious.
That leads us to the tweaker people, and they say, we don't know, we just sold it to some guy, right? And then that's when he's like, take me to the city. And he's like, I'm not taking you to the city. And he's like, if you care about your business, we're going. Yeah, so Alex Wolff's character, Amir, when they're in the car, he's listening to classical music, but he's not listening to classical music. He's listening to someone explain classical music to him. The way I interpreted that was him being like, this doesn't, like, you care too much what people think. You don't like classical music, you just know you're supposed to like it. They go to this guy named Edgar. He's running like a fight club underground, and it's been going on for like decades with restaurant workers. When I first saw that, I thought that was like super out of place.
I'm sorry. Saying it out loud is
when you say
crazy.
it out loud, it's kind of nuts. I actually thought that was like really out of place when I first saw the movie. He goes there, and this is kind of when you start to find out that his name means something. Like he used to be somebody. Because when people hear his name, Robin Feld, they start to act different. You're kind of experiencing the whole story through Amir's perspective. You start to like put together that this guy used to be a big deal, but he isn't anymore. And there's this whole history that we don't know about.
When they go to the underground fight club and people recognize him and know who he is, nobody says like anything. Like everybody's quiet, and he walks up to kind of what looks like a leaderboard and just writes his name at the top of it. He does not like boast in his own strength or brag about his capabilities. He was ready to take on anybody to find the pig.
He like writes down a lead, gives it to him on a piece of paper. It cuts to the next day where he's recovering from getting the shit beat out of him, and he's at Amir's apartment, and he makes him breakfast, and he tells him about how his parents didn't have the greatest marriage, but he remembers one night where they went to his restaurant, Robin Feld's restaurant. He says like they talked about that meal, like you made them a meal that was so good, they talked about it for years, and it was like this moment for them and this special memory that they got to always keep, which is a key part of the movie. At this point, you learn that he used to be like this big deal chef, and he's not anymore for some reason. He gives him a piece of paper that Edgar gave him. He's like, do you know where that is? And he's like, yeah, this is a high-end restaurant. Everybody knows where that is. I'll take you there. And so he makes the reservation, and they go to the restaurant. And while at the restaurant, he asks him about his father and why he doesn't work for his father. Amir's like, well, he wants me to find his own way. He wants me to find my own way, and we just kind of stay out of each other's way, And he's like, your dad sounds like an asshole. Something that happens a lot in this film, Nicolas Cage will ask Amir and other people very simple, direct questions, and they won't be able to give him answers. They'll use these weird platitudes that don't mean anything. They'll say like, oh, well, you gotta be locked in. You gotta be in the, you gotta be in the zone. You gotta be, you know what I mean? They say like these weird little empty platitudes that don't mean anything. And he's like, I'm a real person. Talk to me like a person,
Yeah.
Isn't that how we all are, though? We're all just like so disconnected.
It was words. Words are just, nothing. Complicated airflow.
Once upon a time, I was in a work environment where those platitudes just flowed freely, and it drove me crazy because they weren't real answers to my questions.
How helpful are you being if you're just saying all this weird shit?
Not helpful. You're wasting my time.
Yeah, you're wasting our time by not saying anything. So anyway, they're at the fancy restaurant. It's called Finway's. He asks to see the chef. The chef comes out. He's Chef Finway. They ask about the pig thing because this is the lead they got from Edgar. Amir's like, you should tell him who you are, because at this point, Amir knows that he was someone like of means.
Yeah. This is one of the best scenes in the movie, I think.
This is the best scene in the movie. This scene, I'm so glad.
This scene's incredible.
I finally get to talk about this because I think about this scene once a week probably because it f***ed me up so much. He recognizes him because he used to work for him. Finway does. And he's like, oh my God, you're Chef Feld. It's been, 10 years? He's like, 15 years. Like, oh, the time, I thought you were, a time is sure. Oh, he just goes, sure, yeah. Because he's heard this so many times. And Finway sits down and he's like, how are you? Do you need medical attention? Because, he still has bruises from the night before. It seems like he's getting nowhere with him again, kind of like what we talked about just a minute ago where you ask a direct question and you seem to get nowhere with someone. And so he kind of leans back and he goes, what's the concept here? Oh, well, and then he gives some bullshit answer that makes no sense, but it's like hoity-toity, something the critics would like, right?
Right. He's asking about, like, with the food. What's your concept?
With the food. He listens to his weird little pitch, which I'm sure he's recited so many times before. And he says, do you like cooking it? And he goes, it's cutting edge, everybody likes it. It's a big hit. And he's like, do you like cooking it though? And he's like, absolutely. He does like a nervous laugh because he's uncomfortable. Yeah, he says, what was it you always talked about? You wanted to make an English pub. And he goes, oh, did I do that? Do you remember that? And he's like, yeah, why didn't you make your pub? Yeah, but nobody wants pubs. It's a bad investment. And he asks him what was going to be his signature dish, and he recites the signature dish like very quickly, like it's
he
on
knew
the
it
forefront.
by heart.
Yeah, like he knew it by heart. It's on the forefront of his mind, like he thinks about it all the time. And then he does another very boisterous, nervous laugh. And this is when he leans over and says, "None of this is real. You get that, right? Like the critics aren't real, the people aren't real, you're not real by extension."
Like the customers don't ultimately care about you.
He said, "You live your life for them, and they don't even see you. You don't even see yourself. Every day you wake up and there'll be less of you. We don't get a lot of things to really care about." And that's when he says the best line in the movie.
And it's a haunting message, I think, for not just him, but probably a lot of people, especially creative types, too.
He's a man who pursued an art form and sold out, essentially. That's the cost of selling out.
He let his dream go for security.
And this scene really resonated with me because there's so many times in our, like, I mean, I don't know if you guys can relate, but like I can relate to this all the time. Like when I make something for like art or whatever, when I try to be an artist, it is hard to ignore that thing in the back of your mind that's saying, oh, I can make money off of this, right? Because that's the next leap in logic is, well, you're supposed to make money out of the thing you do, right? There's a cost to that, and it's hard to find like that balance. It's just our society our society rewards people that make money off of things.
It seems like he's telling himself this is his dream. He's telling himself he's happy. He's telling himself he's getting by. And Rob sees right through it.
It kind of brings me back to what we were talking about earlier with Amir listening to people explaining Mozart to him or people explaining classical music to him. But it's kind of similar to what you and I are doing right now. We're explaining why a movie is good. And whoever's watching this video is watching the video instead of watching the movie. So I'm going to say this then, just so that no one's confused. If you have not seen Pig, please watch the movie before you watch this video.
As we put this at the halfway or 2/3 point of the video. Oh, by the way,
we get information from him that kind of what we probably should have known already, that it was Amir's dad who arranged getting the pig stolen. Rob goes to meet Darius. He basically tells him that he's not giving him his pig, and he turns him away.
Darius says, like, don't come back. I will kill you if you come back to my home.
Rob goes back to Amir, and he gives Amir a list of ingredients to go get for him. They go back to Darius's house and they prepare a meal for him.
So they come back.
And not only do they go back, but they make him dinner.
In his house.
They make him the meal that Amir talked about earlier, the one that his wife and him shared all those years ago, the one that they still think about. This kind of breaks Darius a little bit. Darius comes apart and he says, get out.
Not just the meal, the wine too. Rob says, I remember everybody I ever served.
Yeah.
I remember every meal I ever made.
That's a true testament to how seriously he takes his art form. He gets emotional. He says, get out, and he doesn't leave. And he finally tells him that his truffle pig is dead. Rob kind of breaks down because that was as far as I can see it, the way I interpret this is that was the last thing that Robinfeld cared about.
When he tastes this meal and he gets up and leaves the room and he's clearly upset, the first thing he does is pour himself a glass of whiskey to get the taste out of his mouth because it's too much for him. Before he tells him the junkies who came in and stole the pig, they didn't kill it on purpose. They were just too rough with it.
So you kind of find out that like his wife died. The other guy's wife did not die. Amir's mother did not die, but it looks like she has like some severe depression or some kind of mental illness that we don't get to see, which is fine. I think that's okay to keep it vague. But there's mourning going on with a lot of these characters, though, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's a pretty melancholy movie.
I kind of interpret it more as kind of a hopeful ending a little bit. It's obviously bittersweet, but like he tells him like, oh, see you Thursday, and he's like, I'm going to walk home. And him saying I'll see you Thursday to me is like he's okay to like move on, you know.
Amir's he's a little bit invested in this because the pig is what finds the truffles, and that's what helps him run his business. But Nicolas Cage basically says, like, the pig was just my friend. I don't actually need the pig to find the truffles. I can find them. He said something like, the trees tell you where they are. It's incredibly vague.
I'll just ask Treebeard where the truffle is. We're fine.
So Amir is like, okay, guess I'll see you Thursday.
And then Amir gets back in his car and he's listening to the guy try to explain music to him, and he turns it off and cries.
He's worried about what his father thinks. He's listening to the radio that's telling him how to feel. But by the end of the movie, he learns to kind of go his own way, follow his own course of action, to not be told how to feel, but to feel for himself.
And that goes for all of you watching as well. You don't need to listen to us, you know. Life destroys, art preserves. That's the theme of this movie. I've seen that theme in other movies as well, and I'm a big fan of it.
I haven't watched The Bear yet. I just
you haven't? It's so good, dude. Oh my God, Tim.
I like listening to my mom talk about it because she calls it The Bear.
The Bear.
Did you watch The Bear?
The Bear?
Oh, Tim, it was so good. One of those episodes, one of the best episodes of television I've ever seen. I love The Bear.
I know exactly what episode she's talking about, and she is 100% correct.
I don't know, so.
Watch the fucking Bear, Tim.
I guess I'll have to watch The Bear.
The Bear.